Ladies and gentlemen, there is a young man in the chess world who I would like to nickname the Prince. The reason why I give him this nickname, by the way, super hard nickname. I mean, can you imagine like a fighter, the Prince? It's because he has always been the heir to the throne. The best player in the world for the last decade has been, exactly, Magnus Carlsen. And Magnus Carlsen himself stepped away from the World Chess Championship unless one man, in his own words, emerged to challenge him. And that man was Alireza Firouzja. Firouzja became the youngest ever player to cross 2,800, breaking the record of Magnus Carlsen. Firouzja is a perennial contender in the top 5 in Classical, Rapid, and Blitz, which are the 3 most respected formats in chess. He very quickly became the best bullet player in the world as well, this year winning the Bullet Chess Championship over Hikaru Nakamura, who many regard as the best player in the world in Bullet. And right now he's on a mission. And I'm going to show you a few games that he's playing right now in the Sinquefield Cup in St. Louis, here in August of 2024. And in a week, Alireza Firouzja will play the semifinals of the Speed Chess Championship against none other than Hikaru himself. He is the Prince. He was supposed to be the next big thing. He crossed 2,800. Then, and I hate to use this phrasing because this is what children use, he fell off a little bit. He got to 2,800 and he fell off that pedestal. We see there his rating 2751. 50 ELO is a lot of points, and it's especially a lot of points at that level because that is the difference between number 3, number 2 in the world, and like number 15. But Alireza right now in this tournament is absolutely crushing. Now, I actually already covered this game. Covered this game a few days ago in the video, which I called Ding versus Gukesh, when the two of them played against each other. I'm going to quickly show you this game. This was the first round of the Sinquefield Cup. And in this game, Alireza and Fabiano Caruana played a very exciting game where Alireza captured a pawn in the opening with the black pieces. He was up a pawn, but it was Fabiano who was attacking him. And we actually see Fabiano there played the first 20 moves of the game without even thinking. They start with 2 hours, and every time they move, they gain time. By the 20th move, Fabiano had more time than he started with. Alireza was in bad shape, but his calculation skills are very, very good. And speaking of which, I have a video on this channel where I beat Alireza in a Blitz game. That was like one of my greatest accomplishments. And at that time, he was the #1 ranked player in the world in Blitz chess. So I beat the best ranked player in the world in Blitz chess by rating, by ELO. But yeah, he's not the world champion of Blitz. That is the Norwegian. This game against Fabiano was crazy. It was deadlocked for a while. Alireza had a minute, and it went, 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 and finally Alireza broke through. It was very tense. It was messy. There was a draw at the end, but ultimately he beat Fabiano Caruana with the black pieces. 2793 rated Fabiano Caruana. And then he made a couple of draws, and then he kept going. And here's another crazy stat for you, which I'm going to tell you right now. You can look forward to it later in this video. Alireza Firouzja has played the world champion, Ding Liren, at the time of recording, August 27, 2024. I don't know who's the world champion when you're watching. He's played Ding Liren 9 times in classical chess. He's 4-0 against him with 5 draws. 4 wins, no losses in 9 games. He's won half the games they've played, basically. Crazy. Absolutely nuts. So I'm going to show you this game as well. He had this game against Anish Giri, who has struggled in this event and hasn't played his best chess. Alireza opened with e4. It fits his style, open style. Nowadays, everybody's trying to, play e4, e5, looking for a solid game. Alireza plays the Italian. He lives in France now. He is well-versed in the European fine arts, fine dining, fine fashion. Knight to f6 and pawn to d3. Not playing for the fried liver, and black plays bishop c5. You're going to see this covered many, many, many times. Castles d6, and Giri plays a5, which is a move that prevents white from expanding with b4, which actually Fabiano did against Firouzja, right? So you'll notice, right, here we have b4. We have a very early b4, and here we have the same position, but this time it is Alireza who is with the white pieces. His opponent stops him from playing b4. We have bishop to b3, and a typical game of the Italian, knight bd2, black plays bishop e6, and Alireza goes here, targeting this knight on c6, pinning it, ideas of d4 in the air. Queen b8 is the move chosen by Giri, who's going to simultaneously accept damage here, open up the b file, get on a7, which this pawn freed up. A lot of meta stuff here. I would not recommend, you know, if a beginner plays this move, you straight up think they thought this was castling. Like, some of you might have a opponent slide a queen over like this because they thought it was a king. Yeah, no. Bishop c6, pawn takes, and then knight goes back to f1. So the position is black has equalized. Black has the bishop pair. Black has a slightly damaged pawn structure, but everything is totally okay. White is probably going to move the knight over here and play for d4. That is White's main idea. Now black plays bishop b6. Anish spends 20 minutes on bishop to b6. Because there's a lot of things here that look good. There's queen a7. There's queen b6, stopping ideas of d4 because the bishop lands here. There are ideas like a4 trying to take space. I can't really... I mean, there's also this move. The idea of bishop b6 is so that the move d4 doesn't come with the tempo. So black can play ed, cd... Now d5 striking at this pawn, and now the knight and the bishop are very nice, and black's next move is probably c5, a4, this type of stuff. The bishop b6 is a smart move. We have knight g3. Knight g3 is designed to allow d4 to happen, right? So black plays a4, and he spends another 20 minutes. Kind of nuts, right? 1:59 on the clock, 1:39, 1:20. So he spends a lot of time. Alireza goes here. Clearly Anish wasn't, like, uber comfortable. Otherwise, he would have spent 40 minutes moving pieces. Like, I mean, top level chess fascinates me because I have no idea what they're thinking about. Like, what could you possibly be thinking about? I mean, obviously, you're looking at c5, you're looking at a4, I don't know. But you know that white is going to go here, and you're trying to figure out how to respond to it. You can't play d5 because you lose this pawn. Yeah, I mean, queen c8 is another idea. And against d4, you might even have some sacrifices, not right away, but that's sort of like the idea. Also, you know, queen a6, trying to infiltrate on the diagonal. I don't know. A lot of fascinating ideas. Knight g3, a4, d4. Now, this does not work. Because e5, knight to e4 is covered by the knight on g3. So d4, and now Anish plays queen a7. So for the last three moves, Anish goes from 159 to 102. 107, excuse me. He spent 52 minutes. It's a lot of time. Alireza is usually the guy that spends a lot of time. Now bishop e3, very normal stuff. Very normal stuff, right? Now Anish plays queen a5. So the idea is to undermine this pawn, right? a3 could potentially be on the cards. Black actually kind of struggling to come up with a plan here. White also obviously queen a5 is protecting here, so de is a threat. So queen a5 protecting this pawn and also putting some pressure over here with a3 ideas. Alireza plays queen c1, so now a3 not very good because you have b4. But the other very clear idea of queen c1, my friends, is you're creating what's called a battery, and you have this very famous sacrifice of the piece for the two pawns to open up the opponent's king. Pay attention because this happens in a lot of beginner games. You can, you know, create bishop and queen like this and strike, especially when the pieces near here don't have a lot of support. Like normally the queen is on the home square, protecting, but not in this case. So king h7, chosen by Anish. Now knight h4. This is Alireza style. Firouzja, fire, right? It's in the name. He's going to put a knight on f5, and he's looking to sack. Like, you give him two moves, bishop h6 is just game over. Right, game over. gh, queen h6, queen g7, mate. So knight h4. This is an open declaration of wanting to take your opponent's head clean off. So we have knight to g8. Again, Anish spending 10 minutes. He can take on d4 here, trying to open up the center, create some chaos, but white would play cd, then it's not really clear what the follow-up is. Computer likes queen b5. The idea of queen b5 is you want to obviously take and put pressure, but if white like waits, then you play queen c4. You try to trade the queens. Queen b5, queen c4, very slow idea. And generally, this kind of makes sense because when your opponent is trying to set up an attack on the side of the board, you should strike the center. You should. And now you have the open queen, you get the rook pressuring. Now Anish here plays, instead of ed, he plays knight to g8. He undevelops the knight completely. And Alireza obviously goes forward to f5. So g6, you take the pawn on h6. But maybe you don't even have to. Like, if you take right away, there could be some stuff here with ed, like thrown in. Or thrown in right away, like ed. And then I'm not really sure you get a good position. But now Anish plays c5. And I think the hesitancy, like the decision making here was a little bit slow from Anish. And very quickly, Alireza does something smart. He takes on e5. The thing is, Anish was still okay maybe if he played very ugly, very passive chess like this, like with the pawns and defense. The problem is when you try to combine passive play, it's like you go back, but as you back up, you try to throw a punch. Very few people can do that. You know, very few people can move and try to punch at an angle. Like, he's going back, but he's also coming forward. And so the best move here, believe it or not, is this ridiculous knight g7, which is a crazy move. Giving this up, and then you shut the center completely. And why this is so brutal is black's pieces are completely stranded. And after bishop d7, you sack another piece, and then you play queen g5, and if king h7, this is mate. It's mate. You can't stop it. Rook g8, knight f6, and this is checkmate. I mean, this is disgusting stuff. But this is so instructive because when you have multiple pieces, and at least 2 or 3 attacking an enemy king, a move like this, sealing out 2 very important pieces, is just amazing how brutal the attack can be. Alireza plays the second best move because he's not Stockfish. He's Firouzja. He takes on e5. And again, look, Anish is almost left with the prospect of this wall. He's just blocked out his pieces. And so for this reason, he has to take on f5, knight f5, and now de5. And now obviously the attack losing a little bit of steam. You don't have the knight anymore. But it doesn't matter because here, very simple, c4. And the idea of c4 is quite beautiful. You will never bring this bishop back into the game. You played with fire. You tried to build a little bit of a structure there and break through, and now your bishop will never re-enter the game. Never. It's actually quite disturbing. So now black has to run away, right? He starts like, he's trying to like get the bishop back into the game. He's going to bring the queen back, bring the bishop in over here. So Firouzja playing rook d1. You know why he's playing rook d1? Because if you trade all the pieces, guess what? That bishop is still never coming back into the game. And while these pieces over here, remember I told you there's an attack brewing. So rook d1. Now look at this queen a8. Anish has to bring the piece back. Now, great move. Anytime you have a rook facing each other like this, you would like to move your rook up to a spot on the file where you have good protection and where you would like to make the trade. Not on d2, although this is also okay, but not right now because you lose this pawn. But like, for example, you know, here rook d2 is not horrendous, but rook d5. And the point is, you just, if a trade happens, you're going to take, you're going to have pressure. You have a strong pawn in the center, right? You want to make the trade where necessary, and you also want to induce c6. You want to induce and seduce the pawn forward. And the point is that now you've made your opponent block the position. And sometimes, you know, there's going to be another weakness that you created. So rook d8, just queen c2. You know what the idea of queen c2 is? Very simple. He just wants to make some more trades. He wants to make trades, and he wants to freeze the pawn on a4. So queen a6. Now the rook goes to c1. Not necessarily the best move, but he wants to enable the movement of the queen. So rook d7, a3. Now the pawn's not going anywhere. Just a simple improving move. Knight f6, queen e2. All right, you're moving. Can't go here because queen g4 is a fork. So queen c8 back. Queen c2, they repeat once, and now queen c3. Queen a5. And now this nice move b4. I think somewhere here Firouzja could have played slightly better, but he plays b4. They trade on passant. And queen b3. And now he has created an outside pass pawn. So he has black playing defense against the endgame problem. He also has black playing defense with this bad structure. g3, simple improving move, brings the king up, very instructive. Pawn up, king up. Notice those two moves, g3, king g2, are the top 2 moves of the computer, which is kind of nuts. But the point is you slowly make progress toward the next phase of the game, which is the end game. And in the end game, you need the king. You also might need to get off the back rank. There might be problems on the back rank, so you safeguard your king against any nonsense, right? Now we go rook a1, now we're going to push. Now we're playing queen c2. We're waiting. Rook b1, now we have the b file. Now we want a pawn. So Anish decides to not even protect the pawn. Gives it up. Now Alireza is a pawn up. He trades. We go to an endgame. Rook b7. Rook b7 is not the best move. He had 7 minutes here. Apparently offering a bishop trade first was better. If black rejects it, you bring the file here, and you try to play rook to e3 first. So for example, g6, rook e3, if takes, knight e4, the outside pass pawn is decisive. But it's very difficult to do that. He plays rook b7. Anish actually gets back into the game here, but immediately blunders it back. Anish had to give up the a pawn here, rook f7 here, and rook f8. And actually, Anish is okay, but he rushes with king g6 and just immediately blunders back. And yeah, Firouzja, rook f7 is a beautiful move. And I think this might have been the move that Giri missed from a distance. You lose the pawn. You cannot take it because knight e5, rook e7, rook d7, which is even more brutal. Now you have to take. And yeah, Alireza gets out of there with 3 extra pawns, which at this level is more than enough. And he slowly pushes everything forward, gives up the piece. 3 pawns are running down the board. You simply cannot stop them. And in this position, Anish Giri resigned the game. He cannot stop both pawns. And Alireza won. This game was sustained pressure. This game was a person who just outplayed his opponent in an Italian game where clearly, you know, Anish had some good prep. Like, he was playing everything instantly. Knight f1, Anish played bishop b6. He, you know, maybe couldn't remember the details. And yeah, just d4. Very nice positional game. Alireza wins the clash in the center with de and then c4, this key idea, completely locking out the pieces. And it was one-way traffic. It wasn't exactly clean. There was this knight e4 moment later in the game, but he wins. A win is a win. Now, this one was impressive. This one, you know, up until this point in the tournament, Ding did have some interesting games. Really, there has been a big dark cloud and really a massive question mark about the form of Ding Liren as he, you know, is looking to defend his world championship here later in 2024. Some of you may watch this so far in the future. It already happened. But yeah, there's a lot of questions. You know, Ding it almost felt barely won the last world championship. And though, you know, he did, he has struggled a lot in every format. Rapid, Blitz, Classical. And many, many question marks exist. And you know, here again, we have an Italian. We're going to have a very similar game, d6. In fact, that is, I believe, literally the exact same opening. And then on move 6... Giri went here, and on move 6, you know, a4 was the move chosen by Firouzja as opposed to castling. So here Firouzja plays a4, forcing Ding into playing a5, otherwise b4 was coming. And now bishop g5. Firouzja really likes to play this system where he plays bishop g5 in the Italian, and the reason why this is considered not so great is because the engine with black loves the move g5. You kind of have to play g5. You can castle with black, but the pressure here is very annoying. And, you know, you can play bishop e6. I'll play queen b3. And at some point, you got to face the music. If you don't, if you keep making improving moves, I will castle. G5 at some point becomes obsolete. You can even sacrifice in some positions. But, you know, like this is the kind of game that white is going for. And Ding is a principled man. He plays queen e7 and he plays g5. So the engine loves this. I mean, the computer really, really likes the setup for black. It thinks that black should be aggressive. It thinks that the bishop on g3 isn't a particularly good piece. But the problem is, when you get into a game like this, someone's going down. And you can tell from the time management, bishop c5, a4, right? Yeah, Ding needed to kind of build up the courage to play g5. He played g5, but he spent 14 minutes. He really did not... He was weighing his options. And he was remembering the theory, bishop to g3, and now he plays bishop to g4. It's not the best move. I think here there's some other systems, but in general, yeah, bishop g4 is the move chosen. Knight bd2. Now the bishop gets out, so it's never hit with anything. And also black has ideas of long castling. But after bishop to b5, Ding does not castle long, because then he would come under a pretty fearsome attack over here. He castles short. So you play these two moves. Now you have to commit yourself to castling short. Rook e1 is the first move played, safeguarding the center, freeing up the f1 square for the knight. Knight to h5, simply king to h1. Now, look at the time spent. So, 17 minutes moving the bishop. There's just a degree of hesitancy, right? 20 minutes. I mean, at some point, you gotta move faster. So king h1. Multiple ideas behind king h1. Most of them, I think, include playing h3. You couldn't play h3 now because knight g3 you can't actually take, although you do trap the knight. But clearly king h1 has something to do with the g1 square and also getting out of this pin. Now Ding plays knight g7. So he goes back with the knight, and you would think he's preparing an attack, and he's also preparing to route the knight maybe somewhere else, but it doesn't really make sense to f4 because you literally could have just gone to f4. So clearly some ideas here. Knight g7, and now Firouzja starts kicking out the bishop, right? Starts kicking out the bishop. Not going to take because that just gives me a bishop. You go here. Now the bishop drops back to c4. It's a very mysterious move. Very, very mysterious move. Bishop c4. So we went there. We did our job. Now we reposition the bishop to target the f7 pawn. Black has many options. He plays king h8. Obviously, you're setting up f5 ideas. Bishop d5. Super mysterious move. I mean, the most mysterious. Maybe knight c4, knight e3, knight f5 ideas. I'm not sure. I mean, you could have taken the knight from the other angle. I don't think you're trying to do that. Knight goes back to d8. And now c6 is coming. But the second that he leaves the center, here comes d4. The same move that he played against Anish in a totally different position, of course. But again, in the Italian, you strike at the center with this d4 move, and there it is again in a wildly different position with many, many pieces on the board. f6 now, so Ding playing very solidly. Here comes knight f1. So we got out of the way over here. We're repositioning. We want to go knight e3. We want to fight for the light squares, right? Maybe we want to play queen d3 as well. Defend our knight and get out of the pin. Ding chooses c6. The bishop comes back to a2. Now the knight repositions to e6. Very solid, very tense game. Here comes knight e3. Both players are trying to implement that plan, right? Alireza's moving forward. He's looking to take on e5. Maybe, maybe not. It's super tense. Here comes Ding bringing the rook. And according to the computer, he should have moved the rook here with the incoming knight f5. And apparently the rook on d8 is poorly placed for all of these knight jumps. And knight f5, etc. Knight g4 is the move chosen. King h1. Now bishop b1, lining up the bishop over here. Black can get an advantage here by launching counterplay with takes, rook h8. And counter-attacking Firouzja. I'm not sure if how he evaluated this position, but it's kind of dank that you can just totally reposition your pieces here and launch a massive counterattack. Ding plays bishop g6, though. He respects the Firouzja attack. Queen d2, now Ding jumps in with knight f4, and it's the wrong moment. Ding goes for a clarification. He should have kept the tension. He could have played h5, rook e8, queen f7, a lot of ways here, but he plays knight f4, and actually, if you take here, it's the best move, but Alireza doesn't take. He continues to keep the tension. Queen e6, rook d1, now Ding starts the counterattack. It's like Alireza was waving a red flag in front of a bull. He really, really, really wanted to get in a fight. He loves these complex positions. Queen f7, now Ding has 5 minutes. He has 5 minutes to figure this out. Usually Alireza is the one low on time. Remember the Fabi game? The Fabi game around move 30, it was 5 minutes. Right around here, it was like 17 to 30. He's always down on time. He's down 30, 40 minutes in every game. Here, he did it in a way where Ding now has 3 minutes to navigate the position. Knight to e3. It's tense. Now Ding looking for clarification because he has 3 minutes. Take d5. But it's losing. And what Ding needed to do here is he needed to play h4, bishop h2, and literally bishop h5 or king h8. And the nervous system of Ding simply failed because he kind of had to sit and go, I don't need to touch anything. But sometimes, and this has happened to me, it happens to everybody, you get low on time, you want to clarify things. Take d5, looking like I'm going to clarify. But when the position opens up, ed, cd, take, guess what? At the end of the day, there is simply a pawn hanging. And it's very bad because you go bishop b8 and I just trade and I win another pawn. And let me tell you, that was not the hardest thing to figure out. I think Ding just had a moment of collapse here. Like maybe he thought Alireza was going to take with the knight, perhaps, maybe, I don't know. But he played his next move pretty quickly. But the sequence of moves that leads to this position is straightforward. Pawn takes. And that's it. And just queen a5. And, maybe Ding thought he had something here with a counterattack. But you simply lose 2 pawns. And Knight f4, queen b5. Yeah, Ding, obviously creating some counterplay, but just knight h4 and knight f5. And we trade off the pieces. Rook e7 is a very nice Zwischenzug, by the way. In between move. And the king has to go to the back rank. And if you go there, I do this. And Ding resigned. And he resigned because you're simply losing. King g5. I even have this here, g3. And this is mate. So you got to go up. And your king is stuck. And this is mate. And it's just all bad. And Alireza beats Ding Liren for a 4th time. And he is now up to number 5 in the world. He has won like 4 tournaments this year, the Bullet Championship, the Rapid Online events that he's playing. And he's back up to 27, nearly 2770. The Prince of Chess, appointed himself by Magnus Carlsen. He was always supposed to be that guy. And it's good to see him take a dip and now get right back to where he belongs. That's all I have for you today. Get out of here.